Back in July of 2022, Sony and PlayStation took a gamble. They decided to buy out Bungie for billions of dollars in the hopes that Bungie could kind of kickstart the live service endeavors and really propel them into the future. So how has that gamble gone? Not particularly good. Sony spent about $3.7 billion to acquire Bungie, to acquire Destiny, and basically any IP under Bungie now, including Marathon. Fast forward to November of 2025, and Sony has straight up said in their financial reports that the gamble they took on Bungie so far has not paid off. And I don't know if there are any regrets there, but at the very least, Sony is not happy with the results that Bungie has been producing. So in their latest financial report, as IGN cites here, Sony said it recorded a 31.5 billion yen, or a roughly $204.2 million impairment charge as a result of Destiny 2's underperformance. That was significant enough to drag down profits at Sony's Game and Network Services segment, which includes Sony Interactive Entertainment. And right here we have the exact quote from Lin Tao, who is the current CFO of Sony. Quote, "Regarding Destiny 2, partially due to the changes in the competitive environment, the level of sales and user engagement have not reached the expectations we had at the time of the acquisition of Bungie. While we will continue to make improvements, we downwardly revised the business projection for the time being and recorded an impairment loss against the portion of the assets at Bungie." And the News Outlet Game Post spotlighted another important quote regarding Sony's outlook on Bungie. Here's what Tao had to say. "This is an impairment loss of Bungie's intangible assets. These assets are the target for the impairment loss. As for goodwill, that is supported by the whole game segment, so there will not be any impairment loss for goodwill. For this time, Destiny 2's game performance did not reach the expectations we had when we acquired Bungie. We still have some intangible assets, and the question of whether there is still any risk remaining or not. Marathon, which is going to be launched, and Destiny 2, if the performance does not reach what we expect, of course, there is a risk of impairment loss, but we don't believe this will impact the whole game segment, at least at this point in time." If you want an explanation on what exactly impairment charges are, or what they mean by quote-unquote goodwill and whatnot, right here we have an Investopedia page that highlights this and summarizes this in a digestible way. But basically what it comes down to is that with Bungie's current performance, they're worth a lot less than Sony had anticipated. Currently, Bungie's value to Sony is not as good as they thought it would be, and that has in large part to do with the fact that sales of Destiny 2 combined with the lessening player engagement has put Destiny 2 in a position where Bungie has ultimately failed to meet Sony's expectations for when they made that massive acquisition of $3.6 billion. But you know what has exceeded sales expectations? Nintendo Switch 2, so there are plenty of owners out there who probably need cases and accessories. Which brings us to the sponsor of today's video, JSAUX, makers of high-quality accessories for your handheld devices. What I've got for you today are some really neat and useful Nintendo Switch 2 accessories. I was particularly impressed by the variety of cases on offer, starting with these shock-absorbing containers, of which there are a few varieties, including a regular case. Then there's a storage case that can store games inside, and also comes with these grips that you can use with individual Joy-Cons detached and everything. And you've even got a moddable version that allows you to add additional features in the back, like a kickstand, a strap to hold a battery pack, or a magnetic phone holder for Switch 2 games that utilize phone functionalities. For something a little more traditional, this black carrying case right here comes with straps to make it easy to carry around. It's got tons of room inside to store other accessories. It's got a good amount of slots for game cards, and is going to keep your Switch 2 well protected. If you want something a little more compact and colorful, here's this ultra thin orange and blue carrying case that really stands out. For an outer shell that also gives you a bit of extra grip, this protective case right here is a nice option to have. On top of that, convenient accessories like this portable storage unit for cartridges, analog stick nubs for extra range of motion, anti-glare screen protectors for significantly better visibility, wheel attachments for racing games, a compact TV adapter for portable video out solution, and a charging dock for Joy-Cons really flesh out the Switch 2 user experience. If you want to enhance the way you use your Nintendo Switch 2, JSAUX has got you covered, and you can get your own accessories by using my link in the description and comment section below. And yeah, I mean, there's no better indicator of this than looking at Destiny 2 Steam charts right now, where you'll find that currently Destiny 2 has the lowest peak numbers we've ever seen for this live service since its launch. We're seeing record low player numbers, and you can especially see this if you look at this chart right here showing all of the peak concurrent player numbers for a given month. You can see that the last 30 days has seen just a little under 23,000 players at the peak. That's kind of been the best performance of the last 30 days. And scrolling down, you'll find that no other month has a number that low. This is truly unprecedented for the Destiny franchise. The diminishing player base is talked about in this PC Gamer article that highlights the difference between past expansions and current expansions. So, for example, the two previous Destiny 2 expansions, Lightfall and The Final Shape, peaked at over 300,000 concurrent Steam players on the day of their launch. The Edge of Fate, the latest expansion, it only topped out at 99,193. That's a huge loss of players. And with Destiny 2, I mean, there's just too long of a history to be able to summarize the roller coaster ride that it's been as far as the peaks and valleys are concerned. But there were a lot of valleys, and among the most infamous being the way they've been vaulting content, basically deleting content that people paid money for from the game. Then there's the fact that The Final Shape was made to be the conclusion to Destiny 2. And in many ways, it was a proper conclusion, but at the same time, the plan was to keep Destiny 2 going. But they almost made The Final Shape sound too conclusive. They added the word final in there, and this is already something that one of the developers told PC Gamer that it's kind of, in hindsight, not a good idea to do if you want to maintain your live service for a longer term. So Tim Clark here said, in hindsight, putting the word final in the title was probably a mistake. It's a word that invites departure, and that it did. And then there's the fact that post-Final Shape content just hasn't been anywhere near as substantial. And then the Edge of Fate introduced the portal and new progression systems that ultimately just made the game a lot more of a grind fest, a lot more insufferable. And, you can tell that they're just trying to stretch the content. There's a lot more of a focus on random rolls now rather than players being able to engage in the activities to acquire the materials that they need to craft whatever they want to craft. Destiny right now just feels extremely padded out because it doesn't feel like the game has the level of support to really bring about, a wide array and a wide variety of content to be able to support the game in the long term. And hell, if you want to investigate the myriad issues surrounding Destiny 2, just like Google, Forbes, and Destiny 2, it's been one of the news outlets that's been most on top of Destiny 2 with, editors like Paul Tassi being someone who's played a lot of Destiny, so they really know their stuff. But you can see all of the most recent articles from Forbes surrounding Destiny 2 have all been very negative. The outlook has not been hopeful in any way, shape, or form, constantly discussing all of the mistakes that Destiny 2 has been partaking in and the downward trend that Destiny 2 is facing as an IP and as a live service. And that's all combined with all the troubling developments within the studio itself, behind the scenes, with tons of layoffs having hit Bungie, demoralizing a lot of the developers within that studio. Back in October of 2023, Bungie was hit with mass layoffs along with internal delays. On December of 2023, it was reported that Bungie devs essentially spoke out about the soul-crushing nature of their work environment amid layoffs, cuts, and fears of total Sony takeover, which is happening right now as we speak. Literally on August of 2025, Sony CFO straight up came out and said that Bungie's independence is getting lighter. They're essentially starting to take over Bungie, and their creative autonomy is lessening. And that likely, at least in some part, has to do with Bungie not producing the financial results that Sony expected when they acquired Bungie for $3.6 billion. And then there were reports last year that indicated that projects like a Destiny 2 spin-off got canceled, how there are no more plans for some of those massive expansions that we saw during Destiny 2's peak. And then beyond that, no plans for Destiny 3. Instead, Bungie is deciding to delve into Marathon, and that is not showing a ton of promise, at least currently. Back in June of 2025, Marathon's alpha was so kind of poorly received or tepidly received that it forced Bungie to delay Marathon to essentially an unspecified release date indefinitely, though Sony has come out and said that they plan to release Marathon by end of Q1 of 2026. So, by the end of March of 2026. But Marathon being an extraction shooter, a genre that is becoming very saturated, and Marathon not standing out in any huge way to kind of compete against the current norm, combined with controversies like how artwork was definitely and clearly plagiarized from a certain artist who did a similar style of like minimalist kind of graphic design, paired with the way the alpha didn't go particularly well for players and didn't garner as much interest as Bungie would have hoped, and Marathon ultimately not being the kind of game that people expect or not even necessarily want out of Bungie. They put themselves in a situation where for extraction shooter fans, it feels like they've got better options. And then for Bungie fans, they're not getting what they like to get from Bungie, which is, like a Destiny-style game. And competition's only gotten stiffer with Arc Raiders kind of taking over. This extraction shooter has gotten tons of positive reception, and the player base is, really consistent. The fact that the all-time peak was 9 days ago, almost 500,000 players, and we're still getting 24-hour peaks of, over 350,000 players. The fact that we're seeing these kinds of peak concurrent player numbers on Steam indicates a very healthy extraction shooter that will present as a major competition for Marathon, and that makes Marathon's launch and making that successful a much bigger hurdle to overcome. And that's on top of other extraction shooters like Hunt Showdown and Escape from Tarkov, still, garnering a good amount of players. Now, beyond acquiring their popular IPs, a big play that Sony attempted with Bungie's acquisition was to essentially attempt to fuel their live service pursuits. Back in 2022, they talked about how they plan to launch more than 10 live services by 2026. 10 live services within the span of 4 years. That is absolute insanity and one of the dumbest moves I've seen a company make. Live services are huge, like time investments. They're long-term gigs, essentially. And you're saying that you're releasing 10 within the span of 4 years? They're going to cannibalize each other, not to mention how difficult it is to launch just one live service. You want to launch 10 and are riding on all of them being successful. But the only attempt that's actually worked out is Helldivers 2. But beyond that, you've got Concord, the massive failure of a hero shooter that came just way too little too late and didn't stand out from the pack. Marathon is their attempt to delve into extraction shooters, but currently the impressions surrounding it are mixed, and it doesn't feel like this will be the game to overcome the existing norm for extraction shooters. And then there are all the canceled live services since Sony announced that they would be releasing 10 live services by 2026. They canceled a God of War live service, some kind of sci-fi live service from Bend, Twisted Metal live service, Last of Us multiplayer live service, Spider-Man live service, along with other unknown live services, and Operation Payback from Bungie. And when it comes to Concord, while that did technically launch, it got canceled just 2 weeks after launch. So as for what's still in progress, we've got Marathon, we got Fair Games from Haven, a Horizon MMO from Guerrilla, that seems to be moving forward, Gummy Bears from an unknown studio, and then some unknown live service game from Jason Blundell, former head of Deviation. So yeah, Sony got really cocky with their live service ambitions, and they really relied on Bungie being able to be a major contributor to those ambitions. But ultimately, right now, what Bungie is being is more of a financial hole for Sony than it is being a financial asset that's generating profits and that's fueling Sony and its video game division as an entity. And with all this context, again, it doesn't shock me that Sony is, in fact, trying to take over Bungie operations more, that Bungie is losing creative autonomy, and that autonomy is getting lighter, as Sony CFO put it, which is rather ominous to hear, probably, on the development side of things. But yeah, what this all ultimately amounts to is that right now, Sony is probably having some regrets about Bungie's purchase, at least currently in this present short term. They've basically admitted that this acquisition has not gone down well for them and that Bungie has lost them a lot of money, ultimately, as of right now. And Sony is likely praying that Marathon will be the thing that will make Bungie a profitable entity to have purchased, but prospects currently are not looking good. That doesn't mean there isn't a chance for a comeback. Doesn't mean that a lot hasn't happened in the last month since Marathon got delayed. Maybe overhauls are substantial enough that when people play Marathon again, when they do, a new alpha or beta, that word of mouth will be positive, and maybe Bungie has a chance to, make a dent in the extraction shooter genre market. But as of right now, just outlook surrounding that game and the interest surrounding it, especially from Bungie fans, is not at the peak that, gives it an outlook where it feels like it'll be a successful launch and a profitable endeavor for Sony and Bungie. But only time will tell. In the meantime, though, I'd love to hear what your thoughts and opinions are on this whole situation in the comments below. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.